Hello there, welcome to Riot Act Reviews. This is the part of the Riot Act podcast, the show as part of the Riot Act podcast where Remfry and I, my name's Stephen Hill, by the way. Hello, how are you doing? I hope you're good. This is where Remfry and I, Remfry Deadman, who's there with me, becloaked once again.
Hello. You can tell we're recording in the morning. The light's shining on my face.
Yeah, like
We've
a
discussed
vampire.
this before. Like a vampire.
Yeah. And you all right? You good?
Yeah, man, I'm good. I'm very excited to talk about this record.
Me too. Good day. Going to be talking about this record. I'm going to get this over and done with because So here's before we get started. This is the two different approaches to approaching this record. Remfry yesterday said to me, "I need to do this a little bit later in the morning because I'm going to have two more listens to it because I've made 800 pages of notes. 800 pages, not 800 pages. That'd be ridiculous. 800 words of notes already on this album. I have got." About 30 notes on this record, and I could have done the review for it about 7 seconds after I listened to it the first time through because it's just unfucking deniable. We're going to be talking about The World Is Going to Ruin You by Vane FM, the band formerly known as Vane. The second studio album from the youthful Bostonian hardcore band, the follow-up to their much hyped and much admired 2018 debut album Errorzone, which was maybe both of our favourite debut album of the year 2018. I do remember that it was definitely mine. I think it just pipped Maya by Conjurer that year for that position in our top 20 albums of the year. Don't know if I still stand by that now. I might do. It doesn't really matter. I liked it a lot. That's the point, basically.
It was super high in my list.
Top 10, definitely.
I think in mine it was top 5. Off the top of my head, I want to say I put it at number 4, if I recall correctly.
I think it was 6 in mine, if I remember rightly.
Yeah. Basically, we both really loved the first album. Thought it was absolutely fantastic. I think the criticisms that we saw about it, which I imagine we may go into later in this review, I think we thought were very surface level and not particularly worth listening to particularly. And fantastic record. Absolutely amazing.
I've been sort of ringing the bell for this band since I heard that very short and lovely. You know, I love a 4-track short EP from a heavy band. They did a split with Gift from God 2017. Ever since I heard that, I was like, this is fucking brilliant. This band are great. Really
listen.
Great.
I mean, it's incredibly easy to listen to that from a time point of view because, as we've stated several times before, I think the Vane songs are less than 5 minutes. Those 4 songs together are less than 5 minutes. They're part of that EP. But I mean, I still regularly listen to those 4 songs. I don't know, if I'm walking somewhere and an album's run out, I've still got another 5 minutes, 10 minutes to go before I get to my destination. Whack on the Vane EP. You know,
if you can't grab that Burnt by the Sun EP in time, you can listen to that Vane EP. And you know, I've spoken about how 5 minutes of just and then you're gone is chef's kiss.
The Burnt by the Sun EP is twice as long, isn't it?
It's 8 minutes, yeah. So it's just under
almost
twice.
Yeah,
it's not far off. No. So the chat from the last album, Errorzone, was about how much the band had adopted some sort of nu metal tropes in there and sort of flavors within the sound of the album, and how that was sort of differentiated from the, like we say, kind of white hot blasting noise and hardcore that they had done prior to that. And
there was a subtle but a definite shift between the EP stuff and the Errorzone stuff, wasn't there? Yeah.
Not sure it was that subtle. I think it was quite a clear shift, actually. I mean, pretty clear shift. I
found it relatively subtle. But yeah, I appreciate there's a lot of people who didn't find it subtle.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I can see why people thought, it was still fucking heavy. I mean, we're talking about nu metal. We're not talking about it sounding like edema. This is the thing when people talk about nu metal. I mean, I've said this a bunch of times before. Just because you say nu metal doesn't mean you're talking about edema or Hoobastank, or do you know what I mean? The kind of, or POD, or some of the more, or Linkin Park, or the softer parts of nu metal. There were still some nu metal bands who had really, really like Slipknot were a new metal band for the first album. That Mudvayne album, that Mudvayne album is heavy when it wants to be heavy. It's really, really fucking heavy.
Yep.
You know, the first couple of
great as well.
The first couple of Korn albums are really, really heavy. They're really heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and you know there were a load of bands who were chucked in with that new metal stuff. I guess prior to the massive commercial boom of it, where you were like, well, this is undeniably very, very heavy. Static X's first couple of albums, they're heavy. You know, so I don't see that just saying new metal is like going, oh, you mean it's watered down, blah, 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 blah. No, that's not what I mean. I mean, it has the hallmarks of that genre. And I think Errorzone definitely did have the kind of manic drumming, the kind of quiet, boom and burst dynamics of new metal. Catchy hooks, little bit more melodiism in it. Certainly elongating the songs and making them sort of a bit bouncier definitely helped. But what's interesting about this is I think from what I've seen, there are now people who have done a bit like what they did with that Code Orange single. Is that there are people who are now going, oh, well, Vane now they've done that once. They're going to get more new metal. They're going to get more commercial. They're going to become more easy to listen to and palatable, and they're going to go for that kind of Red State hard rock, big, you know, Danny Wimmer presents festival slot thing. That's what they're going to go for. And people are already like, they suck now. And they've decided, even though they haven't heard this record, they've decided, this is where they go full-blown new metal. And I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not interested. They've sold out without even hearing it. Because random people know best. That's definitely true. That's definitely true. Because on this evidence, that is fucking bullshit. And funnily enough, Vane have, I guess, pulled an Iowa here.
Oh, very interesting comparison. Very, very interesting comparison. I mean, I didn't want to labour the Slipknot stuff too much.
Okay. Then let's say they pulled a great Southern Trendkill here then.
That's not bad. Yeah, that's quite... only because... I mean, there is a point later in the review where I will make a Slipknot comparison, but you know, just to say that, like... one of the things that Vane got accused of a lot, you know, the trolls and stuff, and the people who were just very dismissive, like listened to a track and went, oh, it just sounds like the first Slipknot album, you know. I think primarily because there's a drum and bass break for about a second in the first song, more or less.
I mean, their drummer is something else, right?
Oh, absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. Absolutely phenomenal. But I think people
if
heard
you've got it, flaunt it. Look, you know, we've all seen RuPaul's Drag Race. We've learned anything from that. If you've got it, flaunt it. I think that's what they say. So, Vane's drummer, you go, girl.
I think people literally heard that second, immediately made the Slipknot connection, because, you know, it does remind you of Eyeless, that bit. Mm-hmm. And went, oh, well, that's what this is then. That's what the whole of this album is, which it fucking wasn't at all. But yes, I mean, just to finish up on the new metal stuff super, super quickly, whether you're a fan of the genre or not, there is plenty that can be mined from that genre. You know, take out the misogyny and the shitty lyrics and the shitty rapping and stuff, but bring in elements of the groove and the down-tuned savagery of it and the bounce and stuff. Take those good elements from it and infuse it within this chaotic industrial hardcore.
Yeah. Grindcore
parts. That's a fascinating. That's a great amalgam, especially if you can keep the intensity and the heaviness, which, spoiler alert, Vane 100% do. But they also go into other areas on this album, which, you know, could be seen as a red flag, as being a bit more commercial in some people's eyes. There are more melodic, clean vocals, for example.
Shoegazy-esque vocals,
absolutely.
Vocals,
absolutely. There are whole tracks where, like, there's two tracks at least. I think it's probably only two, to be fair. But there's two tracks
towards the end, aren't there? They're two kind of longest end two.
Where the predominant instrument in the track is piano, probably. Stuff like this. So there are things. However,
but for the record, because I'm sure we will get into a bit more. For the record, when I hear that piano, I mean, if you're like, I don't know, if you're a hardcore obsessive, I mean, we might not be the people for you for this review if that's the case, because I know I've got a bit of a reputation, a long-standing reputation for being really, really into hardcore, and I love hardcore. But at this point, it's funny. One of my mates the other day said, one of my mates, he works with this guy, and he's really, really into hardcore, and he just listens to hardcore, and I reckon you'd get on. I'll have to introduce you. I reckon you'd get on really well with him. And I sort of went,
was it a mirror?
And I was like, no, and I went, I don't think I would. I don't think at this point in my life, if someone said to me, oh, you like hardcore? And I go, yeah, I love it. Yeah, me too. I just listen to hardcore. I'd probably go, you're not going to want to listen to me talk about Tears for Fears, then are you, mate?
Yeah, you can't talk to them about you too.
I can't. I mean, I can. They just don't want to hear it.
They'll leave.
They'll leave, won't they? They'll leave.
They'd leave.
Go, what about Jesus? Why? I thought you liked Jesus Piece. It's like, I do. I like both. What's wrong with that? Anyway, but but there were people who'd be going, piano, that's not anything to do with hardcore at all. The piano on this is far more relative to something like Paradise Lost, something really doomy and heavy. This isn't Vanessa Carlton.
This ain't Jamie Cullum.
It's not Jamie Cullum, no. This is like heavy, booming piano. And I think they use the piano in the same way as they use the guitars when they want to make a really kind of huge, doomy sound. So I think it's quite a consistent approach in intent behind whatever instrument it is they're using.
Absolutely.
The intent throughout this record, no matter what they're doing, I think that's one of the most impressive things about this record is a lot of bands just make a heavy record and they just go blast beats, we drum really fast, we'll tune everything down, and we'll just go to the vocalist will just go through the whole, and that means we're heavy.
Yeah.
That is this plus that is equals we are a heavy band. And I'm not going to sit here and say that stuff isn't sort of sonically extreme or aggressive or whatever, but it's far more interesting, isn't it, surely, to try and do that with a myriad of different styles and a myriad of different instruments. And Vane do that here. I don't think the intent to kind of slit your throat ever goes, or to pummel you, but it's just they're using piano, electronics, soulful vocals, shoegazy parts, doom, hardcore, drum and bass, weird little kind of electronic parts as well. There's just a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and they've skinned quite a lot of cats. Although I don't.
You don't condone that sort of.
I don't condone that sort of behaviour at all.
We should probably say that as far as we're aware, Vane. The members of Vane have not skinned any cats. But yes, I completely agree. I think they're just, to speak in my wanky way, they're just broadening their palette, aren't they? And they're just, they're still trying to sort of, this record is constantly unnerving, even when it's quieter. And there are quiet moments on this record. They all come towards the end, but they are definitely, or the majority of them, but they are definitely quiet moments on this record. But it is always within the means is always to, at the very least, unnerve you. And during the really chaotic
most
bits,
of the time, to fuck you right up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I think really fuck you right up.
But this is the like I was saying, that those elements on paper could sound like, oh no, this band are softening the edges and they are looking to come to this from a far more sort of commercial looking standpoint. That is that is not the case. That has not happened in the slightest. They have found a way to incorporate those elements while still retaining that really, really heavy edge. Fear in Non-Fiction is the second song they released from the record, and I think that is a class example of managing to retain the elements that make you super, super, super heavy, whilst also managing to put in a melodic, I'm going to call it a chorus, a melodic refrain, which works, which works really, really, really well. And it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it softens the edges of any other part of the song. I think it can be incredibly difficult to get hooks into this style of music, especially when it's incredibly chaotic a lot of the time. And Vane managed to add hooks in all sorts of unorthodox, strange ways. But Fear in Non-Fiction is one of those times when they add a hook which actually is a little bit more common, or basically it's a vocal melodic hook, but it works really, really, really well. And there's a few of those scattered throughout the records. But the other way that they use hooks, like it might just be a very short, sharp cymbal crash, or it might be a guitar riff, or it might be a sample even. The sample could be the hook, but it's the bit that you can imagine everyone sort of stopping and shouting back at the band during a live set. And I think they integrate those really smartly, because the album remains chaotic, but yet those little parts in the songs are effectively landmarks which guide you through the record. So if you ever feel lost, you'll wait for this landmark, which could just be a ting, like literally in some cases, and then you go, okay, yeah, I know where I am again. And I think that is a phenomenal skill, especially for a band who, as we speak now, have only been, they've been around for 9 years, because they've been putting out various EPs and stuff like that. They formed in 2013, but they've only really started to pump things up in the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years, I think. It's extraordinary. Like, it is a really extraordinary talent to be able to do that. And there's a lot of bands trying to do this sort of thing at the moment, and a lot of them are very good, but very few of them are Vane good, I think.
And it is the hooks for me that are... there's two things why I fucking love this album. One, the fact that it's probably the most extreme thing they've done. Overall, I would say this is the heaviest sounding release they've put out. Even heavier. Certainly heavier than Errorzone, without any question.
What which I was about to say.
Definitely more. And I think because that 5 minutes you get on the the EP that we were speaking about is just like done. Yeah. You are just like, okay, but because this is heavy in, what I mean? Like, people, no one would fucking bat an eyelid if you said Black Sabbath were really heavy.
No.
And the opening, the second you get that massive caustic crunch, like I say, doom metal-esque crunch, and like boom at the start of Welcome Home, I was like, oh my fucking God. This is like, I sort of thought it was just an intro. And it's actually probably like the fourth longest, shortest song. It's far from the shortest song on the record. But I was just like, oh, it's a little intro. And I thought maybe it would be a lot of sort of 3.5 minute long songs. But actually, it does feel like
the third. No, it is the fourth shortest.
The fourth shortest song. The second I heard that kind of opening thing, which now, yes, it is definitely a song without any question. I was like, oh, fuck me. This is like, this is heavy in a different sort of way to hardcore and a different sort of way to grindcore. It's sort of doomy heavy. And then when that, you say about kind of peppering like just hooks and stuff throughout the album, the Killing Womb, which was the first single, that just like occasional plink of the piano, plink, 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 that comes in, which reminds me a little bit of the Paper Chase, who obviously I've spoken about a hell of a lot before. Like, the Paper, and the Paper Chase are way heavier than that album that we spoke about. The Hide the Kitchen Knives is like way heavier than pretty much any death metal album. Do you know what I mean? It is like, it's a horrible record. It's a really unsettling, like, I feel dirty when I listen to it. Do you know what I mean? Just sort of like, I feel fucking ill now from listening to that record. But it's got that kind of really unsettling, like, creepy sort of nastiness to it, that song. But it's also really just fast and hard and powerful, and it's got loads of screaming, down-tuned riffs and brutality and the kind of thing that you would expect from a quote-unquote hardcore band. And There's plenty on here where I've just gone minute long grindcore fucking brutality. But that only tells kind of half the story, because they are better at doing that than most bands.
Yes, definitely.
But the fact that there is so much more to this album than just that. I mean, we raved about that Pupil Slicer album from last year because it's fucking excellent. It's fucking amazing. Like, they're great, right? But I don't think, even with all the the fact they're the 3-piece and stuff, we're just like, God, this is incredible. But that is an oral battery on kind of, I was going to say one note. It's more like 2 notes, 2.5 notes. It's a kind of it's kind of a 1-2 punch. Whereas Vain is like, they're peppering you with stabs and a fork in the eye, and then an uppercut, and then a chainsaw down the back, and like, do you know what I mean? And then a fucking headlock, and then throw boiling hot oil in your face. It's like getting killed by all these things at once, rather than just like smacked in the face over and over again. And I think that is what is so great about this record.
I know exactly what you mean. I mean, if they took that as the pull quote out of context, I'm not sure if they'd sell many records. But yes, you're right, and I do know what you mean.
I've written the hilarious fucking review that I've ever written for Metal Hammer. For
Metal Hammer,
record.
yeah, I read it.
I was just like, it just sounds like someone shitting on your. I think I took that bit out about it. Sounds like someone who's just had a Jaeger bomb and a kebab squatting over your chest. And shitting on you.
Yes, that leads me on to a point, actually. A lot of the really heavy shit on this record, like you say, those sort of grindcore influences almost, is saved for the very short songs. So there's a 66-second Inside Design, which is breathtaking, by the way. That is a breathtakingly intense song. It's fucking brilliant. Or the 91-second Lights Out. These are the really, really heavy, pummeling, just like stab songs to continue this quite horrible analogy that we've come up with. Whereas the darker, more atmospheric stuff actually tends to be the slightly longer songs. I mean, to put it into context, the longer songs on this record, bar 1 or 2 exceptions, we're talking 2.5 minutes or 3.5 minutes, that kind of thing. There's an exception or 2 towards the end, but and
there's actually only, of the 12 songs on here, only 4 of them tip over the 3-minute mark. Yeah.
And that means that the ideas are coming thick and fast, and everything's changing quite a lot. For a record which is effectively just finding different ways to kill you, it is extraordinarily diverse in its 32 minutes. It's around 32 minutes long. What I really like about the fact that the really, really heavy shit is quite short, and then the more atmospheric, slow, menacing shit is a bit more drawn out, that's usually the opposite of what bands like this do. They usually try and pummel you, and it's like intense, hardcore, heavy for 5 minutes. 2 minutes in, it's already lost its potency, because we're doing the same thing over and over again. And then they'll follow it up with some warbly synth for 59 seconds, which gives you a breather for a bit, and then they go into 5 minutes of pummeling again. And that does not make for a dynamically engaging record. I mean, the amount of fucking look, I appreciate the work, but the amount of fucking records like that I've had to review for Metal Hammer, they can all get in the fucking bin. Seriously. But Vain are nothing if not dynamically engaging, and the way that they manage to keep you engaged throughout the record is astonishing. And for me, that is why they are better than 95% of their peers. Vain.
And they can make 90 seconds sound like a fucking prog epic as well. There's a song called Magazine Beach. It's about 90 seconds long, right? And you get this kind of shoegazy vocal start, and this mad drum part, and then it goes into this sort of tiny little bit of almost like soul vocal at the end, right at the very end, for I'm talking literally at most 2 seconds. If that, it might be a second. It might be 1 second, but it's so impactful. It's literally the last second of the song. And it's just like, that's fucking incredible. What an incredible thing to do. It's fucking great. This song, Inside Design, is 66 seconds long, right? And it is really short, obviously, but it's weirdly, I think, probably the most kind of nu metal-y bouncing one there is. There's a little bit of the nu metal bounce in it, but there's also like grindcore. It's got this death metal vocal trading off alongside the kind of hardcore vocals, massive bounce, and a load of weird samples peppered all over it. 66 seconds, you think, fuck me, that's more stuff than some bands do over a 55-minute long deathcore album. Do you know what I mean?
There's more ideas in that song than there is on the New Saxon album. And I've not heard the New Saxon album, but I guarantee you there are more ideas on that song than there are on the New Saxon album. Guaranteed.
Yeah. Weird comparison to compare them to Saxon anyway, but I get what you're saying.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Fair play to Saxon. They have got an idea, at least. I mean, I think they got it in about 1978, and they've just been working that into their music ever since. But you want to talk about the last couple of songs, because I think, you know, again, when I talk about the Paradise Lossy piano, the more threatening part of the record towards the end, the last two songs are the only time it goes over 4 minutes. Wavery's 4 minutes 41. Funeral Sounds is 7 minutes. Now, Funeral Sounds is amazing, I think. And what an amazing way to end the record. 7 minutes, I looked at it and I was like, oh, they're going to just draw out some sort of long ambient thing like a lot of metal bands do. And they sort of do start by doing that. And then there's a bit of a kind of alt-rock bit towards the middle. And then it gets really brutal. And then it just sort of fizzles out. And it's a really, really cool way to end the record. And it does sort of point at the fact that Vane are going, we know the sort of tropes of metal. You put that long kind of ambient weird track towards the end.
At the end,
we're actually going to fuck around with that formula a little bit and do something a little bit different with it, which I thought was cool. It almost felt like a kind of meta nod to, look, we know what most heavy bands do and it's kind of shit, so we're going to do it, but we're going to do it much better and we're going to do it differently.
That's a really interesting point, because what I had put in my notes about Funeral Sound is that the individual elements of the song are incredibly cliched. So the slow, ominous piano intro that builds glacially over sort of 3 minutes or so before everything stops and a creepy sample of a spooky girl comes in. I see dead people, kind of thing. And it's like, oh my god, so far so cliched as fuck.
Do we have to get clearance for that sample?
Yeah, we might do, actually. Oh shit, yeah. And then and then it all gets heavy towards the end. I mean, like, in terms of the individual elements used and the structure of it and the way it's put together, cliche city. However, Vane just do it better than most other people. and yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to know the thought process with that. Was that a fuck you, we're going to do this cliched thing, but we're just going to do it better than you do it? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know what their process. But it was an interesting one, because when I first heard it, I was unsure about it, because I was like, oh, this is just using things that have been used and utilized in a way that's been done a million times before. And what I like about Vane is they don't do that. But given a couple more listens, I was just like, yeah, but it's just fucking great, isn't it? Like, it is really, really fucking good. And speaking of fucking good, I mean, this is where the Slipknot comparison comes in. So I know it sounds like you're saving Wavery. Wavery for me is Slipknot's Scissors updated for the 21st century, in my opinion. I know Vane got a lot of comparisons to that first Slipknot record, in particular with Errorzone, and I don't want to encourage that then, and I don't really want to encourage it now, because I think it's a very surface level interpretation of Vane's sound. But Wavery does everything that Scissors sets out to do, in its sort of unnerving tension and its menace and that build to something truly devastating, and it does it in half the time. And they are two songs that are certainly comparable, and if we're gonna bring objectivity into it, as I like to do, Wavery is a better song than Scissors. And so,
I don't think Scissors is that great, to be honest. So
yeah, we have discussed this privately. I know. I certainly loved Scissors back in the day. I don't think Scissors has aged very well, is what I would say, and that's partly why I said it feels like this is the 21st century version of Scissors. You know, you might not even be a big fan of the Slipknot comparisons vein, and I totally get why, but feel free to use better than Slipknot as a pull quote in your press materials, because I think in this case it absolutely is.
It's certainly better than anything Slipknot have put out since Volume 3, this album.
Oh my god, yeah.
I mean, I know that's not a particularly... the last Slipknot album was really good, but it was really good considering they'd released one absolute terrible album, and
I mean,
Point 5, The Grey Chapter, is all right, I suppose.
Like I say, that song, I don't want to go too strongly on the Slipknot comparison, because I do think it's really surface level, and we're definitely better than that. But that song did 100% remind me of Scissors. That song 100% reminded me of Scissors, and I thought it was a much better, much more powerful, and half the length, much briefer version of it, you know. And
you'll get no argument from me at all, as someone who's not even that bothered by the song that you're talking about in the first place, and who thinks Wavery is fucking amazing. I mean, not
also, just to point out very quickly before we move on, not to say that was the band's intention. I don't think they set out to write, oh, let's just redo Scissors and do it better. I don't believe.
No, well, I mean, I hadn't actually picked up on that at all.
Mm.
It sounded like Scissors, but I can see what you're saying, because when they get slower and a bit more threatening, it does feel really threatening. Sinister. And it's just another sinister string to their bow. And what can I say about this record? I mean, they're just the best at doing this manic as fuck grinding hardcore thing. They're one of the best bands in their field at doing that. I mean, I feel like the really obvious comparison would be Code Orange. That would be the really obvious. I don't think this sounds like Underneath at all, but I think, considering the sort of scene they've come from and how much they're fucking with the formula of what that scene usually does, I think the Code Orange comparisons are like kind of obvious. And I think at this point in their career, compared to Code Orange, you know, Code Orange is where Code Orange were at this point in their career, and where Vane are in their point in those similar periods. I think there's
I Am King up against this, basically. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
I would probably. I Am King.
I think this is better than I Am King. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna. They obviously they've got some way to go before. I think I Am King is great. You know, I Am King is a really great record. But it's really for me the next two where that band stepped up to be like absolutely fucking world class. I think Vane have got there a little bit earlier. You know, I think Vane have got there a little bit earlier. I think this record is fucking spectacular, and like we've already said, it does a lot. It does so much. 32 minutes. I have got to the point in my life. I mean, this is what I will say. I think we've said this privately. We've done this year. We've done, in terms of the sort of heavy bands that we've reviewed and the heavy albums that we've reviewed, Rolo Tomasi I think is wicked, but I kind of like the less heavy stuff on that. You know, I was more surprised and impressed by the less heavy stuff on the Venom Prison album, although I think the Venom Prison album is great all the way through, and I think they're a really fucking great death metal band who have added loads more to their kind of palette. The Korn album sounds like Korn. Do you know what I mean? Like, hooray, we'll take it. In, you know, kind of 20, nearly 30 years into their career, you'll absolutely take that. Cult of Luna, I thought was, you know, is again their back catalogue is so fucking spectacular that you just expect them to release really, really, really amazing records, which did, I think, as I said in the review, dull the impact for me for a little bit. But I feel a little bit like, having listened to quite a lot of heavy music this year, I'm not interested in heavy music at this point unless it's really, really, really kind of hitting incredibly hard. Like, incredibly hard. So all of the albums that I like thus far this year in heavy music, there's one coming up in a few weeks, which is more of a sort of punk album, really, which is phenomenal just because of how hard it hits. And
I know exactly
if you're not,
what you're talking about.
I know you do. And if you're not hitting me with that level, you know, at the moment, when it comes to sort of heavy stuff, I tend to just listen to lots of old death metal and lots of, early noughties hardcore. And so I need an album like this is what will get my attention. Getting an album being like, oh, it's a bit like, sort of metalcore and blah, blah, but yeah, don't care. Not interested. Oh, it's like a sort of Gojira type thing, but it's like kind of mid-period Gojira, but it's like, I'm not interested in that. I will look at it and, like you say, objectively go, oh, is it any good? And I'll see what they're doing. It's interesting. But in terms of actually going back to it and wanting to listen to it, I'm absolutely not going to do that. I'm absolutely not going to do that. But this,
you want extremes. You want extremes, is what you're saying, effectively. I
think ultimately.
Whether it's extremes in the really, really, really heavy direction, or whether it's extremes in the complete opposite direction. You either want it to be super, super fucking heavy and in your face, or like in a totally different genre, like say the Gang of You's album, which I've continued to listen to religiously, practically every single day. I mean, I agree with you. I feel like I was there about 5 years ago in my music listening life, to be totally honest. But yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. I kind of like. But I mean, I also think that's
unless you are absolutely exceptional songwriters. I mean, there are exceptions to that rule. I would say. I mean, I was listening to I know you won't agree with this, but I listened to the BBC session, the Architects at Abbey Road with the orchestra, and I think it's fucking amazing. It's much better than the album. Just as a little spoiler, I don't even know if it's out yet, but I think that's better than the original. And for those that wish to exist album, I think it sounds loads better. So I'll definitely go back to that. That's kind of feels like the definitive version of that record for me. It's really, really good. But I just feel like nothing is going to grab me unless it is making me go, holy shit. And just another kind of metalcore album is just, it's just not going to do that as much as something like this, because this is genuinely unsettling. And that's kind of what you want, isn't it?
It is fantastic. And I suppose in some ways, it's the cliched thing of the heavier bits are heavier and the lighter bits are lighter. And it is that. But to be honest, that's what you want a band to do on their second record. You want them to take the blueprint of the first one, fuck with it, and expand on it. And that's exactly what Vane have done. And I think as a result, I think The World Is Going to Ruin You is a masterpiece from beginning to end. It's one of the most exciting new releases from a new band in the world right now. I really hope that the hookier elements are hooky enough to bring people in who wouldn't normally listen to a sort of chaotic hardcore record. I think that remains to be seen, but I would love to see that. Because to my ears, The World Is Going to Ruin You does not feel like a compromise in any way, shape or form. It feels like an evolution, and one that proves that the hype that surrounded this band around the release of their debut, and even just prior to that with the Gift from God split, is well and truly justified.
I agree. It's fucking brilliant. It's Vane FM, The World Is Going to Ruin You. That's what it's called. Go and listen to it when it comes out on Friday, if you're listening to this.
This album is going to murder you, is what they should have called it.
It's going to shit on your chest. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, everyone. We'll be back on Friday. We've just seen the new Foo Fighters film, so we're going to be talking about that. Talking about acting, the craft of acting.
We will be talking about the craft of acting.
We will be talking about the craft of acting and how
difficult
that is to get right. All right, speak to you later, everyone. Bye-bye.